This is the Fantasy Roadshow.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Roadshow with your boys here. You can call me Truck, and I'm joined as always by Shane O'Mac. And today we are talking Week 11, start, sit, red light, green light, good matchups, bad matchups, all that fun stuff. We're going to get right into it. But before we do, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media, and let's get right into it. Shane, how are you doing today? How's your week treating you?
Doing well. I almost put like a paper bag over my Dallas Cowboy memorabilia in the background and a salute to awfulness that is going on, but I held back.
Okay. Well, I'm right there with you. The Bears fired their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, and brought in their passing game coordinator, who was the offensive coordinator for Bryce Young last year. So a lot to be excited about here in Chicago. So not sure what to expect. We got the Packers coming into Chicago. This is like the worst time to fall apart going into this stretch of the season. So.
And you lost starting safety today. Like, we're recording this on Thursday. I think he was somebody from the secondaries out this week. I saw.
I checked out right now, so I'm not quite sure about that news, but I'll look into it a little bit after this. But yeah, anyway, rough stuff, man. Week 11, we are here talking red light, green light. Let's get right into it, Shane. Red light quarterback, who you got this week?
I am going to be taking my own advice on this, and I'm benching this guy in 2 leagues, despite the negativity we opened the show with. But I have got Jordan Love on a bust alert this week, playing Chicago. Listen, like, the last 3 games have not been pretty. I think it was like 17, 6, and 11. And the Bears, like, for all their troubles, like, they're really good defense against quarterbacks. Like, they're giving up less than 200 yards passing a game, fewest fantasy points allowed. I think it's like 12 or 11 points they're only allowing per game. Like, so here's the guys I'm starting over Love this week. And for my own self, I'm starting Goff and I'm starting Justin Herbert in 2 leagues over him.
Yeah, that's not a bad move. Jordan Love is on my list as well. Love being able to red light a Packer when they're playing Chicago, but it just makes a lot of sense. Did you know he's only had 2 games inside the top 10 this year?
That's crazy. It's probably I don't even know if he got it on the first game against Philadelphia, but
no. It was I think it was the second game and like the 4th or 5th. Yeah. Either way, only 2 games inside the top 10. Hasn't been a great year for Jordan Love, but he's still Jordan Love, and the Packers should win, but we're not expecting a big game from Jordan Love. I would imagine not Aaron Jones. I'm talking about the Packers. Josh Jacobs has a pretty big game against Chicago, but either way, I agree with you. Jordan Love is on my list. I am also red lighting someone that I had greenlit last week, and it bit me in the ass, Shane. And that's Sam Darnold. Darnold. I hit him on the green light list last week, and that didn't work out, man. It was such a great matchup for him, and he goes out there and just has a stinker of a game. But 4 out of 5 weeks, he's finished as the quarterback 13 or worse. So I think like early on, the NFL defenses didn't really have a lot of tape on Sam Darnold in a while. And, with this new offense with Kevin O'Connell. So now that they got some film on him, they're kind of figuring out how to defend him. And he just hasn't been playing up to par. So Titans give up the fewest passing yards in the NFL. This is just a recipe for disaster for Sam Darnold. I still think the Vikings win, but it's probably going to be an ugly game.
So I had Darnold as an option too. So Roadies, if you've got Darnold or Love, we are in lockstep on this. When I was looking at this in road games this year, Sam Darnold has finished as the QB 13, the QB 9, the QB 16, and the QB 21.
Yep.
Not good on the road. So
yeah. All right. Well, anyway, let's move over to green light quarterbacks. Shane, who you like this week instead? I know you mentioned Goff. I know you mentioned Herbert. Are they both on your green light list?
Yeah, Herbert is definitely the one I have for sure. Like, he's been on a tear, top 10, top 12 quarterback the last 3 weeks. And I think it's coincided with, like, his ankle is now 100% because he's starting to rush more. Like, he's been over 30 or 40 yards in 2 of his last 3. Bengals are like bottom 6 or 7 in passing yards allowed per game. And like 2 out of the last 3 weeks, the quarterbacks facing them has either finished as the top quarterback or the second best quarterback that week in fantasy.
Yeah, I can get behind that. My green light quarterback of the week is Mr. Unlimited. It's Russell Wilson for the Steelers taking on the Ravens. I mean, we talk about it every week.
Yep.
Quarterbacks playing the Ravens have great games, right? And Russell Wilson, I mean, if you look at the 3 games he's played, 2 of them he's finished inside the top 10. And, he's got, 6 touchdowns and only 1 interception in that time span. So he's been playing good ball. And Ravens are giving up the most passing yards, the most touchdowns, the most everything. Their pass defense is abysmal right now. So Steelers are dogs at home. I expect the Steelers to play really well and possibly beat the Ravens. Lamar doesn't always play great against the Steelers.
No,
so
he doesn't.
I really like Russell Wilson in this matchup. I think he's got a chance to lead the boys to a victory at home, upsetting the Ravens.
Yeah, I think it was what I saw. The stat was 6 or 7 quarterbacks have been over 21 points against the Ravens this year.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So,
yeah.
But I do love Jared Goff as well. So, if you got Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, or who was the last guy, which Justin Herbert. If any of those guys are on your waiver wire or on your bench, plug them in, get them on your roster, and plug them in this week. So, all right, Shane. Let's move over to running backs. Red light running backs. Who you pumping the brakes on? Who's going to have a bad week this week? Tell me about it.
All right, a little pop quiz for you. Who do I say always is a red light running back each week?
Who's ever playing the Ravens?
That's right. So that is Najee Harris.
All right.
They're just brutal. And this is why like Russell Wilson and quarterbacks are such a great play against them. They know they can't run against them. I mean, first in the league in rushing yards allowed per game. I think it's like 70 yards allowed. And really, if you look at last week, you're going to think, well, Chase Brown had this great fantasy day. Well, most of Chase Brown's production came through the air. He caught like 9 balls for 60 yards. And that won't be Najee Harris. If that's anybody in that running back committee, that's Jaylen Warren. So I just think this sets up as a bad game for him.
I completely agree. He's on my list. I don't want no part of Najee, but again, I'm talking great about the Steelers. So I think Russell gets it done in the air. We'll talk more about wide receivers in a little bit, but yeah, it could be tough sledding for Najee. Yeah. Who's been having great games lately. I mean, he's been looking like a really, really good running back. So my red light running back of the week is good old James Cook for the Buffalo Bills.
I thought about that.
that. Here, let me tell you, he's RB11 on the season, having a great year, right? But if you look at the last, 6 games, he's been hot and cold. RB46, RB7, RB29, RB1, RB27, RB12. So he's just been like bad game, good game, bad game, good game. Well, he's coming off of a pretty good game. So if you believe in trends at all, that kind of lines up with what I'm talking about here. Chiefs are giving up the fewest rushing yards. This is a very, very tough defense to run against. And I'm afraid James Cook is going to have one of those bad games and continue this trend that he's on. So I'd watch out for James Cook.
Yeah, I think we have to start treating the Chiefs rush defense like the Ravens, and you have to be extreme caution playing running backs against them. Like, I think the only thing that can save James Cook from having a bad day is if he does like a Chase Brown, where it's a bunch of production in the air. But I don't even see him getting over 50 yards rushing, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Other guys I don't like this week, tough matchups. Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard is playing, let me pull it up real quick. I just had it up here. Tony Pollard, Minnesota. Minnesota's a tough run defense. Tony Pollard, Chase Brown. Chase Brown's going to have tough sledding against the Chargers. We talked about Najee Harris and then Travis Etienne. What is happening with Travis Etienne? Like, the guy's completely unusable. And he just shouldn't be anywhere near a starting lineup. So just a couple honorable mentions. Let's move over to green light running back. Shane, who do you like this week? Who are you plugging in instead of the guys we just talked about?
Hey, I'm always targeting running backs facing the Buffalo Bills, and that's Kareem Hunt. So Buffalo, they're pretty good against the pass, but I think they're giving up the second most fantasy points to running backs. And then even more than that is like they give up the most receptions and the most receiving yards to running backs per game. And we just saw Kareem Hunt have, I think it was 8 of 10 targets last week. So he can play that role in the receiving game as well. And so this Buffalo defense giving up, I think it's 4.6 or 4.7 yards per carry. I just expect them to be able to run all over Buffalo.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He is on my list. Tough. He's, 4 out of 5 games he finished inside the top 12, right? I mean, like, the guy's just been an absolute stud. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, so I have one that I'm really confident in and another one that's just like a dart throw that I feel should be a good one. So I'm going to start with the obvious one, David Montgomery. Now, we've seen David Montgomery be a steady RB2 pretty much all year. He's been pretty consistent, but he's been very touchdown dependent. I mean, he has 4 games under 40 yards. Yeah, 4 games under 40 yards isn't great when you're starting an RB2. You don't want to bank on that touchdown. However, look at this matchup. The Lions are favorites by 13.5, 14 points. The first time they've been this big of a favorite since 1995. Okay, they're going to be winning. They're going to be winning big, and David Montgomery should find the end zone, which should make him very serviceable in your RB2 slot or your flex, wherever you decide to play him. But David Montgomery should be in your starting lineup. And then on top of that, I feel like Nick Chubb is due. Okay, now hear me out. He's 3 weeks removed from his return from his injury. Okay, he didn't play much last week because the game kind of got out of hand against the Chargers. Tough matchup. But the Saints give up the second most points to running backs, second most touchdowns to running backs. And, I just feel like they're going to start leaning on him more because of the way they struggled last week. And you kind of, get his engine back running. So I'm willing to take a shot on Nick Chubb this week. I mean, personally, I don't really have him in many lineups. I didn't draft him in too many leagues, but if I did and I had him on the bench and I needed a spot start in my flex, I feel like Nick Chubb might have a big week.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick who would you start with Nick Chubb, because this guy I was thinking along the same lines as Nick Chubb.
Okay.
But I didn't want to green light him altogether, but as a flex, would you go Nick Chubb or Audric Estime?
Ooh, I would.
Estime's at home against the Falcons.
Yeah, Estime at home against the Falcons. I do like Estime. He's taken over that backfield, but I am more confident in Chubb against a better matchup against the Saints, right? So I would go Chubb over Estime in that scenario. Yeah. We've seen Chubb be the main guy, and the team's going to need him in order to win this game. So I think they're going to lean on him more, but I do like Estime.
Yep.
I do. Okay. All right. Do you have any other ones that you wanted to mention?
No, that was it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, let's talk wide receivers, red light wide receivers. Who do you not like this week? Who we pumping the brakes on?
All right, I got 3 guys. Because I'm doing like a 3 wide receiver lineup, but I'm going to go 1 and then I'll let you chime in. First is, and it pains me because I've got like multiple shares of this guy on teams, and it's DJ Moore. And it's just been tough. Like the last 4 games, it was wide receiver 58, wide receiver 71, wide receiver 48, wide receiver 56. And then like I'm looking at the matchup, like I looked at like Green Bay over their last 3 games, 5th fewest receiving yards allowed to wide receivers. And I don't know, you can tell me more, but I'm not sure this new offensive coordinator just comes in and unlocks the passing game for Chicago.
No, what's funny is I heard both Caleb and I can't even think of his name right now, something Thomas. They were both referring to each other, and they both kind of had a slip up where they like, oh yeah, we haven't talked much, or like we're going to start talking more. Like he's your passing game coordinator, and you haven't been talking to him nonstop for the past 10 weeks. Alarming. But neither here nor there. I agree with you. DJ Moore, just absolutely terrible, man. Absolutely terrible. Not good. Yeah. My red light wide receiver this week. If you guys haven't heard the news, Anthony Richardson is starting for Indianapolis. So that means you need to red light Josh or I can't think of his name right now. Downs. What's his first name?
Josh Downs.
Yeah, Josh. Yeah. I thought I was wrong.
Well, I thought you were trying to pull. I didn't know if you were going to pull Michael Pittman, but I was like, oh, Josh Downs is the guy. You probably
no. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I was on the money. Josh Downs. He's just, you can't trust him against Anthony Richardson or with Anthony Richardson, and especially against the Jets. Just red light, panic button, for Josh Downs.
I agree. Like I was looking because I looked this up because I have Downs in a couple leagues too. Like, so he's played 3 full games with Anthony Richardson. 2 of those games, he did not even get to 6 fantasy points. Not even sit in a PPR league. So my second guy real quick is Drake London, and it's the PS2 treatment. Like I looked this up because I was like, I wonder if this is really a thing or we just like think Patrick Surtain. I'm like, no, he's a lockdown. Like it was DK Metcalf, it was George Pickens, it was Mike Evans, and it was Garrett Wilson. He held them all to 40 yards or less with no touchdowns and single-digit PPR points.
Yep.
That is something.
Yeah, that's something. Drake London, he's just in trouble this week, man. And realistically, is Darnell Mooney the wide receiver 1 there? Like, are we ready to declare that? Like, I mean, I haven't looked at the split between those two, but I feel like it's very close, and it shouldn't be. So, all right, yeah. And then did you have another one?
No, it was Downs. I agree with you on Downs. That was
Downs.
My third.
Okay, cool. All right, copy that. All right, well, let's talk about green light wide receivers. Who we plugging in instead of them? Shane, go ahead and kick it off. Green light wide receiver.
I'm going with a guy, and like I was like, this guy's been quietly good. He's seen like 11, 10, and 9 targets his last 3 games, but I was like, so I looked up. I'm like, okay, are a lot of people starting him? And like last week, he was started in less than 50% of leagues. The week before, he was only started in 39% of leagues, and that's Courtland Sutton. And I'm like, he's been really good the last 3 weeks. And this Falcons defense is, a bottom 6 defense in passing yards allowed to wide receivers. They've allowed over 280 yards receiving in the last 3 games. I just like the target volume. Nix is concentrating on Sutton as his number 1 target.
Yes, he is. Sutton, he's a great wide receiver, and he has great games. So I can get behind that. I like it. My pick is someone I referred to earlier when we were talking Steelers football, and that's George Pickens. George Pickens, you got to fire him up this week. I mean, 2 out of the last 3 weeks, right? Top 5 games. He's just been having these spectacular touchdown catches, which we've seen in training camp hype videos for a couple seasons now. So Pickens is very, very confident Pickens is going to have a good game against the Ravens. So if you got him, make sure he's in your lineup. I don't know why he wouldn't be. That's kind of an obvious one, but some low-hanging fruit from the trucker over here.
The other guy I got, and this is kind of a little bit of a, he's going to be down on the consensus rankings a little bit. It's sometimes I like these gut feels, and this is just my gut feel guy of the week. Okay. We need to drop for the gut feel guy of the week.
Gut feel guy of the week. I like it.
It's Jameson Williams, and like I just feel like we're setting up for like a 70-yard touchdown catch. I don't think we're going to see Sam Laporta this week. He hasn't been practicing all week. So now, he's probably gets maybe 2 or 3 more targets. With games this year, when he's gotten like 5 or more targets, like 2 out of those 3 games, he's been a top 24 wide receiver. So I think this is a game, if there's no Sam Laporta, that he could probably get 5 or more targets. And you're facing the Jacksonville defense, who is like bottom 3 in receiving yards allowed per game to teams. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move over to our favorite position that we talk about every week, the tight ends. Fun stuff with the tight ends. Shane, who do you not like this week for tight ends? I mean, you got so many names to pick from. Who do you not
like? There's like a couple of guys. There was like 2 or 3 guys I like. I don't like. And number 1, and hopefully I didn't look up his roster percentage, but his start percentage from last week, but I would drop Jake Ferguson from your rosters. Listen, it's not, Cooper Rush is not going to look that bad again. He can't look that bad again, but I think that CeeDee Lamb is going to see double-digit targets every single game. That's what backup quarterbacks do. They like heavily focus in on one guy, and that's going to be CeeDee Lamb. And call me crazy, but I could see this crazy world from the reports I read that they're going to have Jerry's going to have his new shiny toy out there, and Jonathan Mingo on Monday night. And I think they're going to probably try to get him maybe 2 or 3 targets at least. So I just think this is like maybe he gets 3 catches for 20 yards game.
Yeah. Jake Ferguson is such a good tight end too. I have him in a lot of leagues, and it's such a shame this downfall of the Cowboys. And I'm sorry for that, Shane. But
did you drop him? Have you dropped him?
I have him in a dynasty league,
Okay,
so I will not be dropping him in a dynasty league.
No.
But rather stashing him on the bench. But my red light tight end of the week is going to be Evan Engram. Okay, Evan Engram. Taking out Detroit. Detroit's one of the best teams to defend tight ends. I think they're giving up the second fewest points. And Ingram's been pretty good. I mean, tight end 12, tight end 12, tight end 10. He's been a startable tight end in fantasy football. But I'm afraid this week, 8 targets for Mac Jones last week is intriguing, right? Mm-hmm. But against Minnesota, I don't really chalk that up as as a great game, 6 for 40. So against Detroit, I'm really worried about Evan Engram. And I feel like it's going to be more in those Brian Thomas Jr. games against Detroit and not Evan Engram games. So
yeah, that was one I almost wanted to put on there too. And I looked at the same thing. Detroit's so good against tight ends, but then I was like, God, look at the targets he got from Mac Jones. But then so he's right on my bubble list of being one also. I feel like, don't you feel this is maybe they get maybe one score in this game, one touchdown. Mm-hmm. It's like a 31-10 game.
Yes, absolutely. All right, like green light tight ends. I'll go ahead and give you mine. Mr. Jonnu Smith for the Miami Dolphins. Okay. Now I understand last week wasn't great, tight end 20. Okay. But he did have all those catches on one drive. So at times Tua loves to target Jonnu Smith. Mm-hmm. In the 4 games prior to last game, 8 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets. He's getting enough targets to make an impact. He has a week where he was tight end 2. He has the capability of doing it. The Las Vegas Raiders are one of the worst teams in defending tight ends. I feel like this could be a sneaky game for Jonnu to have a big play and also get a lot of targets. That's 7 range. So I like Jonnu Smith. I'd be willing to plug him in the lineup this week.
Yeah, he was with my green light streamer last week. And if you watch that game, he got tackled down at the 1 or 2 yard line, or else he would have had a touchdown. And then I heard somebody talking about him. I can't remember. But they were saying basically Waddle and Tyreek Hill are doing these clear out routes, and it's opening up everything for Jonnu and for A-Chain. And that's who's getting all the concentration of passes and looks.
Yep. Yeah. So
I like that. My guy, scroll down the list for your streamers, but man, light him up this week, and it's Will Dissley.
Will Dissley, I like it.
I know. So shout out to because I wanted to make sure I got this. Shout out to Fantasy Points Data. Dissley was second in first retarget share last week, and not just for tight ends, but for all receivers. So receivers and tight ends.
Wow.
He was second in that in last week. He's averaged, I think, 7 targets over his last 4 games when I was looking. And Bengals are bottom 5 in fantasy points allowed to tight ends. I think it's setting up. I like this game to be sneaky high scoring, so I think he could have a sneaky good game.
I like that play. Totally out of left field for me. That was nowhere near my list. Mm-hmm. And I love that streamer this week. Will Dissley. I love it. All right, clock it in. Let's do it. All right, well, that does it for our red light, green light for week 11. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media. We are live every Sunday at 10 a.m. Come hang out with your boys, ask some questions. Let's talk some ball and to get ready for a great week 11. Shane, take it easy. I'll see you Sunday. Yep. Everybody else out there, buckle up.